Hey everybody, we're waiting on the person who's this show was allegedly done for. This is supposed to be Bob of Honor. Is that what we're calling it, Joseph?
Absolutely not. And there was multiple lies in that sentence. I bullied Bob into watching Ring of Honor. If I'd have just thought of Jensen initially, because I had another plan with Jensen that we were talking about, and I'd have just thought of him, Bob would never have been involved in any of this. But now that he is involved, I'm going to keep making him watch Ring of Honor. He'll be here shortly. I'm going to text him. I've said, Bob, have you heard about this Ring of Honor show? He replies, I'm pretty sure he just concluded like actual work. So bless Bob. I don't want to,
He doesn't do any actual work.
True. He comes on and does the corner three in the middle of his day job. So
does he really?
He does, yes.
And that's incredible.
Multiple people have been concerned that he will get fired one day doing that, which I personally just think would be a good rib. But, it is what it is. So for those of you unaware, today we're going to do – this is a new weekly show. We can play around with the format some, but this is the kind of meat and potatoes. We're going to figure it out as we go here. We're going to talk about this week's Ring of Honor TV, which I believe we have all seen, correct? Can confirm? Yes.
Correct.
Bob, I'm going to assume, has seen it. We're going to talk about that in as much detail as it requires. This week's show is actually pretty good, so we're going to get into different pieces of that. What's going to be fun about that, in theory being the keywords, is that I think we're all like at different levels, but mostly familiar with the talent on that show. Our friend Bob O'Neill, however, I don't think he's seen any of these people wrestle ever in his life. I don't think he knows who they are. I don't think he knows what any of it is.
Oh, great.
Same goes for the old school stuff. So we're going to talk about this current product, and then normally around the halfway point of the hour, I'd assume, it's just a guess, we're all together as a family, you folks included. We're going to go onto YouTube. We're going to pull up Ring of Honor claim from the very start, the very first Ring of Honor main event. We're going to watch that together and talk about it a little bit and just slowly make our way through the history of a promotion that, in fear of being hyperbolic, I mean, has there been a more influential wrestling promotion in the last 20 years of US wrestling, right? It's a pretty cool one to do, I think. What do you think, guys?
I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, especially when you look at like the in-ring style perspective and like where so many of today's current wrestlers have been so clearly influenced by a lot of those talents. That's why it's also such a big deal when a lot of those kind of early ROH talents like resurface on the indies or like make it kind of current day now in like the mainstream, because the wrestlers have a lot of them have so much respect for those early ROH days. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. What do you think, Jeremy? It's probably got to be the most influential. Like if you look at it like as a specific company.
Yes, I mean you mentioned the in-ring style, definitely from that perspective, and even like look at a lot of the top guys now. They all just came up through ROH, like Punk, Danielson, the Young Bucks. I mean, even WWE, Steen, AJ, Owens, AJ, Sami Zayn. Like a lot of these guys just came up, cut their teeth in ROH, right. And I'm sure there's a bunch of names that I completely forgot right there. But like the in-ring style, and then certainly just the talent that just came through that the promotion and had like really good runs in the promotion. They're on top right now, or they've been on top at various points, whether it be WWE or yes, now most of them they actually are on top in AEW, but they've been on top in WWE as well. So yeah, a lot of influence when it comes to ROH, and I don't think it's hyperbolic at all. We've had that discussion on Twitch before, Joseph.
Yes.
And another thing we mentioned is like, AEW with the Forbidden Door kind of stuff. The other week when we did this, we watched Danielson and Kenta, where like that's almost a precursor to Danielson and Suzuki. It's like, hey, let's just throw it out there. Just throw out this big time match that you're probably not going to see anywhere else, and take the handcuffs off it and let them go. Like ROH was doing that before AEW was doing it.
Yeah, I actually think, and the Bryan one, Kenta, makes perfect sense, but like I think Joe and Kobashi is a great comparison for Suzuki and Bryan in terms of the vibe. And it was different because Bryan, obviously, he's a megastar in his own right, whereas Joe was very much that audience's top guy. Bryan's main event of WrestleMania. Here he is, Robert O'Neill. Bob, that text was a joke. I know you actually had to shoot job. I'm just messing. No, it is fascinating, and like we look at tonight's match or today's match, whatever for you guys, it's like Chris Daniels and Bryan Danielson have both been a headline that Jeremy's probably had to write over the last month. Now, to differing levels, because Daniel's obviously did do an impact, and that's neat for sure. And Bryan is maybe the best wrestler in the world still, as we look 19 years later, which is like we're legitimately 5 months away from this being, or 4 months away from this being 20 years old, this match. So there's a lot of meat on the bone in terms of the historical context and the significance, all that good stuff. But we will get to that later. Bob, I was just talking about the concept here, as we're all kind of vaguely familiar with what's going on, and you're new to it. Tell the people, you've been watching Ring of Honor for you watched a couple of weeks back, I know, because you thought we were going to do this before the plans changed and such. Tell me where you're at as we enter this series.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't actively dislike it. It's different, them not having fans. That's taking some getting used to. Again,
Gotta
but
get used to them not having fans.
Yeah.
And I think the weird thing that's kind of in a vacuum is they do kind of tend to just run 2 longish matches and not focus on much else, which is fine. It's just, it's different. If you compare it to an hour of Rampage, it's a lot different. But for what they're trying to do in an hour, I think they're, checking the boxes they need to check.
The television format is something I think we're going to talk about a lot. And with that in mind, we'll dive in here to this week's episode. The date of which, Jeremy, do you have the date of the official, what they would call this? Because this gets very confusing.
It says 10:15 on the ROH website.
So you can get this.
You can watch this program, Joseph?
Yeah, so you can actually just get this on their website for free or on Fight TV, or instead you could go on Twitter and be like, when does it air here? Which is what a lot of people do because they never, no one seems to. And that's probably on them. I don't know. But if you're interested.
It's very on them. I just got to bring that up right off the top. I talk about that on the Weekender often. So many people ask where to watch Ring of Honor. They're like, I don't have it on my TV package or whatever. And it's a Ring of Honor, their marketing team should be 100% dedicated to educating the internet wrestling community that their show is completely for free on their website every week. Yeah. I don't know how everybody doesn't know that by now.
Yeah.
I go ahead, Bob.
No, and I mean, I'm even someone who's kind of plugged into wrestling and, follows wrestling people. I didn't know till I think a month ago that it was just on their website for free. I thought I was going to have to DVR it or whatever, figure out when it's on here. But yeah, no, you can just go on their website and watch it.
I also think, and look, this is, a show about Ring of Honor, so we're not here to dunk on them for the hour, but I will say that I also don't think they've done a good enough job of, making a point of their history. They do a good job of when you actually watch the product, but, in terms of the streaming service model, they have Honor Club, and it's a real thing, and I've had it, but they haven't, I don't think, truly tapped into that to the degree they should have, considering the amount of talent you can see that they're best on Honor Club, And it's difficult. How do you do that without taking the spotlight away from what you're producing now? I actually think Impact Wrestling has struggled with that at times, where I think they celebrate their history also. I mean, they do a great job of that at Impact. Sometimes that comes across man, remember when it used to be fun and exciting around here? And that's something you have to be careful of too. So it's a balance, but it's definitely something worth talking about. And that will be something we probably get into pretty regularly, I think, as this show unfolds. Now, this week's TV, though, I actually thought was pretty eventful. And to Bob's point, the format is definitely not what you would describe as traditionally episodic television, right? They'll shoot angles and there's overarching stories, but generally it's just here are the matches you're getting this week. Here's a promo to explain one of these matches, maybe a pre-tape, all that good stuff. This week started with the ROH World Tag Team titles. Now, this is something that, Bob, I get why this will be a little bit lost on you, but there is some substance here because of the kind of core emotional element with Shane Taylor and Kenny King's conflict, right? That's really what the dynamic was they were using here. And it was Dragon Lee and Kenny King defending the belts against Soldiers of Savagery. Now, Jensen, you and I have discussed this. And I mean this with respect to Ring of Honor, and I hope they stay there and make a lot of money. But I've always said about the Soldiers of Savagery that these guys are future WWE Tag Team champs, and I mean that as a compliment. In that they're like a money act, right? They have this awesome dynamic where they fit visually perfectly, but they also have a complete divide where stylistically they're different, physically they're different, all that good stuff. This match, I'll expand a little bit, but I'll pass it around first. This was a really nice match, and Bob, the crowd not being there, absolutely get why that would limit your enjoyment. But I thought these guys did a nice job of doing the trash talk without becoming Monologue City. I don't know, Jeremy, what did you think about this one?
This is where Shane Taylor Promotions and Soldiers of Savagery, they do very well in the empty arena setting because, we saw it in the Thunderdome a lot and a lot of the empty arena stuff, the trash talking got ramped up and some people it was very cringe when they would do it. Shane Taylor and Moses and Khan very good when they do it. So yeah, I don't like the empty arena setting. I think it takes away a lot from television perspective, especially when it's every week and now fans are back and all the other promotions. But if any team is like kind of benefited from it, it would be this team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There was one part where Dragon Lee directly asked Bob O'Neill if he likes this boot, which I thought was interesting. As aware of the new viewer, that was good stuff. So to explain, Bob, and I'm sure maybe the commentary caught you up, because I think they do generally a very good job with that. Roosh, the head of the faction that Kenny King and Dragon Lee are in, was wrestling Shane Taylor for the world title. Kenny King betrayed Shane Taylor. He's in that faction, but that's his friend. They didn't expect him to do that, right? That was the deal. And that's still a thing, and we're building to, I'd assume, I may have missed it, my bad if I have, but we're building to like some sort of blood, blow off with that deal. It's a blood feud, effectively. And that's what we got into at the finish. Now, I have to say, I mentioned earlier the divide in their styles. Man, the way that, Moses is a big man, can do some incredible stuff, but it never takes the shine away from Khan, who's the more athletic guy. Caprice did a good job telling that story. Jensen, I don't know how much you've seen of these two guys as like singles or as a team, but they're really impressive, right? Super impressive.
Yeah, well, I think of that really when it comes to the entire Shane Taylor promotion stable, because, I've heard Sean Ross Sapp talk about this, probably years ago when he was talking about Shane Taylor kind of like outperforming what any expectations could have been of him, where when they signed him, he had a lot of potential, but you didn't really know what you were going to get.
Yep.
And he's just overperformed consistently to the point where he's just a reliable, top guy for them now. Then with him, you've got Khan and Moses, who, when you bring up the WWE comparison, they kind of reminds me of what they probably wanted the Authors of Pain to be like in the WWE.
Exactly. Yeah.
You had those two dudes. And then you have O'Shea Edwards, who's kind of like the protege now. And O'Shea is a guy I'm a huge fan of because I got to see him, in Nashville and Chattanooga, Atlanta and stuff in the Southeast a lot for a lot of promotions that I follow. So I'm a big O'Shea fan. So I love all of them collectively. And they're a damn solid tag team. So yeah, I'm with you for sure.
Speaking of guys that have been interesting in terms of relative to expectations, Kenny King's a guy who I think sometimes you can be one place so long that people take you for granted. I think Kenny King is very solid in every area. He's a good talker. He's good in ring. He's a guy though that I think very much kind of falls through the cracks in terms of the discussion because it isn't new him being there, right? But for those that watch, I think he's a very useful part of the show. Dragon Lee, I mean, it speaks for itself. He's diving this thing. Bless that guy, man. There's not a person in the building and he's still doing that stuff. In the end, we had the finish with the visual pin for the challengers and then, some shenanigans. LFI retained. Bob, what did you think of this one, pal? Is this your first time seeing all of these involved?
Yeah, I mean, I was entertained, even without the crowd. I think they had a good dynamic going back and forth, and I really liked from, that Blue Thunderbomb false finish, all the way to the end. I really enjoyed it.
What do you think of you're, the most consistent WWE viewer here. What do you think of my SOS for, they feel like, and again, I mean that as a compliment, sincerely, they feel like an act that could fit immediately on their TV, which is, as much as I love this show, that isn't always the case for their pushed acts,
Yeah, no, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised to see them there at all someday.
So to kind of make more sense of that, the main event of this week's show was the 8-man tag, and it was, 4 pure wrestlers. We had world famous.
Quickly.
Go ahead.
Are we moving on to the main event?
I was going, but if you want to talk about the first one, you can.
Oh, okay. I got to talk about Bestia, my favorite part of this entire segment. Bestia, slapping Shane Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know if Shane was cool with that. Did you? Because he was on the apron.
Yeah.
And he was like...
Shane Taylor looked like he was ready to kick the shit out of this.
Yeah, that was interesting. You're right. I'm glad you brought that one. I didn't have my notes right. That did roll. So we had this quartet of pure wrestlers. We had world famous CB, who feels like someone that Bob's quote tweet dunked before. Joe Keys, who recently appeared on one of the AEW YouTube shows. We had Tyler. What's his name now? I'm sorry, Rust.
Taylor.
Taylor. Yeah, my bad. And Eli Asm, who they always frame kind of as the future, and he's a guy that honestly I haven't seen enough of. This match I think was a pretty big spotlight for him. The foundation was their opposition. Now this is what I mean by I love most of the pieces here, but this kind of group of talent is very Ring of Honor. And that's a cool thing for me, but that was to kind of separate what I said about SOS earlier. To explain for those unaware, and Bob, this may help you understand it too. Like, the Foundation basically spent the last year trying to like wrestle control of the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of been unsuccessful because there's such chaos around them, right? Like, LFI don't give a shit. Violence Unlimited obviously don't give a shit. And that's kind of the dynamic. I think, if I'm being honest, I think their format has limited the story somewhat because it isn't episodic. Now, I don't mind that, but I think for you, Bob, as someone who's used to more like straight line narrative, it'll take some getting used to, which I will completely understand because I don't think they've made the most of it either. Now, you mentioned about the crowds and lack of fans, and you're absolutely correct. I also think, though, weirdly, this match was kind of benefited from it because this had like the vibe of like 8 guys in a gymnasium kind of losing their cool during sparring, It kind of heated up slowly but surely. You had the whole deal with, the teacher-student deal with Keys and Gresham, which was really fun. And that really got the intensity up. Rust had a great show in here. I don't know if he's a full-time fit, but on this performance, he probably should be. Lethal spotlight, Eisenwell, and all that good stuff. It was a good match. Jensen, what did you think of this? What do you think of the whole Foundation deal in general?
So one story that I thought was pretty cool in this one, and the commentary did a good job of highlighting it, was the first time Isom and Jay Lethal had shared the ring together, which you can tell is going to be a one-on-one match sometime soon. And you were totally on the money with Isom. Like he made it to, I can't remember what they call it, their tournament, like their prospects tournament.
Yes,
he made it to the finals of that. Yeah, he looked really good. He's challenged for the Ring of Honor TV title and stuff like that. So like you can tell there's plans for him. I love the Foundation as a stable. And the thing is, I don't mind the lack of some of the stuff you're talking about, but that's because I'm watching it almost like I'm watching a new show every week when I watch Ring of Honor. Like there are storyline elements for sure, but what I like about it is that it is just solid wrestling. Like their hour-long show and their storylines do make sense. They sometimes are a little convoluted here and there, but like for the most part, they're stories that make sense of good matches. So like they check the boxes I want out of just like kind of zoning out and watching good wrestling for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Foundation is, the biggest upside I honestly think of that there is to the Foundation is when Ring of Honor gets more involved in the Forbidden Door, because if you have Jonathan Gresham and Hot Sauce Tracy Williams and Rhett Titus and Jay Lethal and these guys, and their opposition is like Bryan Danielson and Daniel Garcia and Lee Moriarty and that's when it's like this could be really, really big for everybody involved. But as far as I love the Foundation stable though. I like everybody involved in the group, and they're all tremendous wrestlers. But I do agree with what you were saying earlier too, though, where it's like there's a lot more they could do with the group. But I feel like that would be done outside of Ring of Honor. If that's
it's to kind of elaborate on what you were saying there. And it isn't always this way. There is some stuff that is more like, kind of out there pro wrestling. In fact, this show ended with the Vincent video that was like, it felt like it was on a different show. Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
Whereas this Foundation stuff is almost like a narrative, an overarching kind of narrative within a sports league, right? It's like these guys are trying to do this. They're doing it within the matches. There's not like a lot of angles. You get some promo stuff, certainly. It does take some adjusting to, Bob. I don't know how much of the Foundation stuff you've seen thus far. Maybe you talk to that a little bit in this main event in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it was entertaining. I always like a big multi-man tag match. It kind of felt like at times like it was a step slow and they were kind of maybe waiting to hit spots or whatever, but that kind of is what it is. But all in all, I mean, it was good. Like they did an 8-man tag a couple weeks ago as the main event too. I like this one more than that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, I think they did benefit maybe from not having a crowd, like you said, but yeah, it was entertaining.
What did any of these guys stick out? I'd assume that you've heard most about Gresham, who wrestling nerds like Jeremy Jensen and myself have always kind of circled, especially the last couple of years. I think he has a real case to be the best wrestler in the world. Did he stand out to you in here? Because he had a pretty good showing with Keys, I thought.
Yeah, he did. And he's a guy that I've heard a lot about, haven't seen a lot of, and I'm interested to see more of him just because, I have heard a lot of hype about him.
Well, I think, if we're getting ahead of ourselves, it feels like the promotion is trending towards him as like the centerpiece, right? It feels like that's where this whole arc is going. Jeremy, what did you think of this 8-man main event?
I like your analogy that it felt like a sparring contest between, because all these guys, they adhere to the code of honor and everything. And the story with student teacher with Gresham Keys and whatnot. And then like, as it picked up, they just got a little bit more angry at each other. And, the young guys, the foundation are established, and the other guys they're trying to make a name for themselves. And it was like, we're not going to let you just kind of like push us around by the end of this. So it was good. It was a solid 8-man tag. I thought Lethal and Gresham, as you'd kind of expect, were sort of standouts in this. O'Neal, like, how much do you know about like Lethal? Because we've talked about Gresham, and like Joseph said, he gets a lot of hype on Twitter and stuff. Like, Lethal's been around forever. He's mainly been in ROH forever. He hasn't had like big spotlight match. I guess he worked All In, and obviously he was part of the Garden match and everything. Like, how much do you know about like Lethal?
Yeah, not like a whole ton. I mean, it's a name that I've heard, but probably only a handful of matches that I've actually seen. So I'm kind of coming in real fresh.
I feel like most people that aren't that familiar with Jay Lethal probably know him more for the Black Machismo stuff than like anything else. Which was entertaining, but like but much different than like pure wrestling type of Jay Lethal.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the bulk of what I've seen from him.
Well, I mean, to give some perspective, it's like 7 years ago, he was the double champion in that promotion, right? And I think AJ's last Ring of Honor match was losing to Lethal in the final battle main event. Like, he, they frame him as the franchise player of the promotion, and obviously the last couple of years he's not been the top guy, but that's kind of the story they're telling too. So you'll get familiar with him for sure, but you're definitely not alone in knowing him most as the guy that did the Ric Flair segment. All that's pretty common, actually, I think. But yeah, to you, Jeremy, you mentioned the way it kind of heated up. The best moment that captured that was when Rust went after Lethal's shoulder, right, or whatever, and the foundation guys were like checking on him. He's like, "Get out of here, man!"
Yeah,
on the outside.
Yeah. They were checking, and they're like, "Back off, just like be cool." And Rust's like, "Oh, okay," and then he just like picks him up and talks. Yeah, exactly.
I think
that's when the whole match as a whole sort of picked up, and then it got like really intense with guys kind of going after each other a little bit more, and the respect was a little bit more out the window, and they were laying it in a bit more.
It's always tough with this. Like, I'm glad they got time because I thought everyone got a chance to show their stuff, and they had a good performance. But I don't know if it needed. Sometimes their TV format, I think, can lock guys into matches that don't need to be this long. And like, I'm not even saying this is the best example because I enjoyed this match, but like, I don't know if it needed that much time. But I understand that their formatting is very kind of rigid in that sense. You'll get cases like that. Next week's show actually looks very promising, right? Because next week's show, the whole theme is Violence Unlimited versus the Foundation, and I think we should probably go at least 2 for 3 on those 3 matches. Anything stands. So next week we've got it was Tracy and Gresham versus Dickinson and Brody, right? Homicide and Lethal, and it's Rhett and who's the fourth man? Oh, Deppen, of course.
Yeah, Deppen and Titus.
Yeah, I mean that's a strong lineup. What stands out there for you, Jensen?
I mean, really, that's all good stuff. I'm definitely down. Someone we didn't really talk about a whole lot is Hot Sauce Tracy Williams. Like, I think he's really, really excellent. Good. He's almost like Gresham level as far as like in the ring to me. So anytime I can see, we said was it the two of them tagging Gresham?
Against Brody and Dickinson. So
that's gonna be great. And they've really done a good job of. It looks like Gresham will probably be the next world champion based on like how things are moving. But Brody King has definitely been the best built from like the mid card up to the main event over the last while. So like having those two guys in the ring together, I mean, we're going to be seeing a lot of that if they're going to stick around. And one thing I did want to bring up as well before I forget is kind of another shout out to Jonathan Gresham. I love that he doesn't really have a finishing move.
So good.
He just works a body part, and he'll just eventually get you with a submission based on whatever body part he's been working. Like, I love the finish of this match where he's got like the leg lock, almost like an Indian death lock kind of thing in. And he's just punching to the thigh until the tap out. And it's like, I love that, I love wrestlers who, I think like AJ Styles is a good example too. Like, he's got the phenomenal forearm. He's got a springboard 450, the Styles Clash, the calf crusher. Like, he has all these ways where, like, something happens and you can be like, that could be the end of the match. Like, you're not really relying on, like, one specific setup or specific move or anything. And Gresham's the same way where, like, the finish of his matches are unpredictable because he can get you at any time if he's been working a body part. So I just want to throw that out there too.
You're absolutely right, and I didn't love the match where he lost the belt to Woods, but one thing I did love about it was he used that like every move he'd kind of won over the last year before that, he used down the stretch in the Woods match, and you bought every one of them as finishes because you'd seen him beat guys like that before. It's a simple thing that he's kind of really weaponized and used well. He's fun to watch in that sense. I'm looking forward to when Bob gets to see Gresham do kind of extended singles match. But yeah, guys, anything else next week stand out? Jeremy, Bob, anything to touch on before we move on?
Go ahead, O'Neill.
No, I mean I'm looking forward to all of it. Really, it's a couple guys that I've actually seen before. Brody King, I've seen. Jonathan Gresham, I just talked about. Wanting to see more. It should be a lot of fun, man. Like I'm interested. I'm excited to get into it more. And I think that's the best way to approach this.
There you go, Bob. Jeremy, any thoughts?
It feels like a kind of a big television show for them, right? Because
you wouldn't know unless you was watching this.
I know. But Violence Unlimited and Foundation's like a pretty big rivalry in this promotion. So them doing 3 separate singles matches here feels like kind of a big deal. But with their television, the way it works, it's just
Well, I mean, Homicide and Lethal, I'm not an expert, but I would guess if you was to rank like Ring of Honor legends, they're both top 10 guys, right? Like in very different ways.
Yeah.
They got to be on the board somewhere, man. And that's a big match. But yeah, it's one of those things, and hopefully people in they're watching along will like take this ride with us, because within the show you can lose yourself in how big these matches feel. Unfortunately, that does not extend outside of the bubble of actually watching the program. And I know that sounds dumb, but like the comparison would be, I don't watch the GCW product closely, but there's like regularly matches that escape the bubble of watching it and reach me as like that's a big deal. Ring of Honor really struggles with that, and hopefully in the time we do this show that changes. But obviously, time will tell. It's a difficult one. We've talked about it before on Twitch and stuff. It is what it is. But
yeah, it's unfortunate because like I was saying, like they have stories that make sense and they have good matches. I mean, but I think like we were saying before, and Bob was mentioning, like the lack of fans kills them. Like that's I think the no fans, like for a new viewer, like if you were just watching Ring of Honor for the first time, I think some people would just be turned off by just the lack of fans and noise and stuff potentially. But
I agree. Yeah.
But the Ring of Honor, like we were saying, they just got to do a better job of like educating people that this is totally free on their website, that anyone can watch it anytime. You got a whole week to watch before the next one comes out. Like, so hopefully we can help do that. Like you were saying, more people should be watching the show, in my opinion.
I think, it's always worth exploring the different options out there. There are so many right now. And the Ring of Honor's product will certainly not be for everyone. That's kind of the idea of all these different subgenres and niches within wrestling, right? That's there is probably people out there that would enjoy it that have never seen it. So that's kind of, hopefully we can help in that regard. Now, speaking of stuff people may have never seen but will enjoy, we're going to watch the first ever Ring of Honor main event. And now, folks, this is on the YouTube. Every match we watch on this series will be free. Easy access on the same platform you're watching us dumb shits talk about. So if you fire in YouTube and just type in first Ring of Honor main event, it'll be right there. It is 27 minutes 18 seconds long. That is the video. The match is a little shorter, obviously. Let's talk about this generally before we actually hit play here. Has anyone else seen this match that we're about to watch? Has anyone seen it before?
I have, but it's been a very long time.
Yes.
I definitely remember who wins, but I definitely won't spoil that for anyone who hasn't seen this.
Jeremy, any memories?
Yeah, same boat. It's been a very long time since I've seen it. I remember like watching a lot of these ROH matches on like an iPod video. I would just upload them to that and just watch them on that. So that's probably like the last time I've seen that, when iPod videos were cool.
It's an interesting one. So I always find with these, we kind of look back at the Ring of Honor stuff. It's always fascinating to look at the card around it, right? It was the first show and it's like super crazy and Eddie Guerrero co-main. It's like, man, different time. It's an interesting time. Mark Briscoe was too young to like wrestle legally, so he seconded Jay against Amazing Red. That story always pops me. It's wild. So for some perspective, before we hit play here, Daniels is obviously the veteran among them, and like he's a guy who's aged so gracefully you can lose sight of that. He's like almost a decade in. I think Bryan is, I want to say 3 years in. Key is like maybe a year more. These are you know, and Daniels doesn't fit this bill because he's more of a polished pro, but like Key and Danielson are absolute prodigies at this time, right? Like we saw the news today that Daniel Garcia had signed to AEW. And I think if there is a comparison to be made, that's probably one you would do. Like this is the equivalent of, you know, Moriarty, Garcia, and maybe someone a little bit deeper in his career. I don't know, Jensen, if you've got a good name, but like talk to that a little bit. It's easy to lose sight just how young these guys were, right?
And it's funny, Jeremy, bringing up the iPod Touch or whatever you watched this on, because I remember some names you brought up just now, like, and I've got one of his autographs right up there because I'm such a big fan still. Amazing Red was like that. Like when I started seeing just random compilations of like him doing moves on like Kazaa and LimeWire, those Napster offshoot things that people used to use. Remember, like that's how I started getting into indie wrestling around that time, was seeing clips of Amazing Red and Loki specifically, like those two guys. Like, and then I was like, wait a second. Then like TNA wrestling just started, and Ring of Honor was starting, and you were seeing these guys that were just, they were doing stuff that was just like, I really couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I was so used to watching like WWE, WCW, and ECW that it was like, wait, there's this whole other world of guys like this. And then you come to find out they're like, you know, Danielson's at the time, he's like early 20s, and he's trained by Shawn Michaels, and you're like, well, this guy's going to be huge. Like, but you know, but then you always got a little worried because they were smaller guys, and you never thought that they were going to, you know, but now things have changed, obviously. But I can definitely remember those times that Jeremy's talking about, like kind of discovering this stuff and like just really realizing there was like this world kind of brewing outside of like mainstream wrestling at the time.
It was really a golden generation, and you can kind of, you know, that's not to say today's guys are lesser than, it's just the circumstances are different. Like I just mentioned Daniel Garcia, he's now an AEW guy. Back then, these were kind of, as you perfectly said there, like there was this mystique to them because they kind of existed in this other world, right, altogether. Like the example I often use is, you know, Roderick Strong's a Ring of Honor guy a few years into his run there, and he comes out to challenge Kurt Angle, and that crowd doesn't know. Like, they don't know what's going on. And now that's almost not unfathomable, but the wrestling world feels so much more connected now. That even though WWE is distant in their own minds, not really, the fan base knows and they're more educated than that. It is a different time. When we hit play, you guys will see what this looks like visually, and you'll realize, like, man, this is a time ago. It looks different. So let's do that. Let's get into it, and we'll talk as the match goes. All right, I'm assuming everyone's got it. Everyone here ready to go?
I am, but does your start with Riccaboni talking?
Yes, we're going to just play, and we'll just
we're just going to play it.
You're going to play it from the beginning? Okay. Yeah. Just let me know when you hit the button.
Okay. Go, folks. We're going to hit play in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, we've got some. Ian's going to set this up. This is. I saw this. I watched this like a week ago, just to kind of, so I wasn't completely coming in blind because I hadn't seen it in a long time. This is one of the more famous triple threat matches, I think it's fair to say. Again, within our bubble of wrestling nerddom. Bob, I'm going to assume you haven't seen this. Fair to say?
Yeah, correct. I have not.
There you go. It is wild that, like, and I know it's cliche, guys. I get we're all aware of this, but the idea that just last week we see Danielson have these two great matches and kind of reestablish himself as perhaps the world's greatest wrestler. And he's like, look at this, man, almost 20 years ago. Here he is, like just getting kind of, we can't put this on the screen for us, so we can't do that. I mean, maybe we can soon. I don't know what the situation will be. Right now, definitely can't do that.
But, you know, it's so wild to your point, though, Joseph, where like, this isn't me talking trash on the WWE, I promise. But like, it's when you see like stuff like what Bryan Danielson the former Daniel Bryan is doing right now on like an AEW, and like what I'm assuming he's probably going to wind up doing also in the indies. Like I expect him to show up elsewhere and stuff and in other companies. It's like, it feels like we got him back. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like he went away on vacation for a long time and he's back now. And that's what makes it like twice as cool. Like, it's awesome for all the fans who discovered Bryan Danielson during his WWE run, because now they get to see this whole other version of him. But then it's cool on like a different type of level for like us that we're like kind of watching this stuff we're watching now. And it's like, now he's back to doing this stuff. He's telling people like, I have till 5 when he's holding his whole stuff. Like, it's like, man, I miss this, you know?
It was a real moment for me when he went cattle mutilation at Arthur Ashe and the place popped. It was like, man, they really know. They watch that stuff. They remember, like, because we realised those crowds wasn't as big as our Thrash was, to say this understatement of the year, but they recognised it. It's cool. It is. And again, like, he had a great run in WWE, but you're absolutely right. It just feels like he's back in the wrestling world now. I guess he's like, honestly, guys, I think we're going to be talking about him on this pod before long. I think he's working Gresham. I really believe that.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
I totally agree. I think that's inevitable. I think there are certain things Danielson probably had on like a checklist when he left the WWE, and that definitely would have been on the checklist, I think.
I can see a world in which, as this thing just eases into it, I can see a world in which you get Ring of Honor World Champion Jonathan Gresham going to a 60-minute draw with Bryan Danielson. I could definitely see a world in which that happens.
Definitely possible. It can happen in multiple different companies.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the Forbidden Door stuff is interesting, especially from a Ring of Honor perspective, because they're kind of, and I think it's by choice in some ways, and I understand why, they're kind of isolated. The GCW thing is interesting, though, with the Briscoes, right? And maybe that's something to watch. Obviously, Gresham's been working there consistently anyway, but I think they actually referenced the Briscoes deal on their like week-by-week thing this week, so that's something to watch.
I know that they... Well, it was MLW I was thinking of, like, actually acknowledged Moriarty signing with AEW, like, on their TV, which I think it's really smart when these companies do that.
Ring of Honor did that too,
Ring of
on
Honor.
Their pay-per-view,
They did when like Lethal came out, right?
Yep.
And like did like that whole speech. Which once again, it just goes to the point that you just made too about like the fans know. Like the actual professional wrestling audience that's out there. There's a lot more than people think, I think. And I think everyone gets so bubbled into like sports entertainment and all this stuff. It's like there's a lot of people out there that dipped out when WCW and ECW went out of business that are getting back in because of what they're seeing now. Like there's a lot of pro wrestling fans, and that's what I so when you acknowledge this kind of stuff on other programs, it's like it's just like, why wouldn't you at this point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like WWE will ignore someone's entire history and people get upset about it. And then but then you see what we're talking about and it's like, it's not exactly what you would want to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Garcia thing was a good example of that because they talked regularly about, he went 60 minutes with Wheeler Yuta. He's one of the top independent guys. And like, well, that helps everyone, doesn't it, really, if we're being honest? And it's interesting. It's a philosophy thing. The thing I always remember about this match in terms of its identity is like, I consider this to be the first triple threat match. It's the first that I can recall that all three guys always feel involved or at least like on the edge of it, which is obviously what the Unbreakable match from TNA 2005, that's famous for that. This is, 3 years earlier. But in this match, and folks will see this as it unfolds here, like everyone feels, at least on the periphery of it, it's not the deal where guys are rolling in and out and, watch it on from afar. It never feels that way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and even in the first 5 minutes, we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, just then it was like almost like a triple submission hold just then. Like they're like instead of throwing someone out of the ring, they did a submission hold on top of someone else.
The thing that is interesting about this, and listen, I don't want to be mean about it because I don't want him to DM me, but Loki had a really good career. And he went to Japan and he made good money and he was successful, but like it is kind of crazy to think that if you'd have asked someone then, they would have absolutely said that he had the highest ceiling in the ring. Like 100, because he was the one that had that kind of dynamite, like star presence to him. I mean, look at his work here. Like he was different. Prime Key was a bad man.
The problem is more of these are landing than they should a lot of the time. And I think that's what the issue with him was, unfortunately. Like I watched him one time knock some dude out with a kick to the face, like live, and I was like, that dude did not ask for that. But
you have to say, removing the obvious objective side away, it did add a mystique to him, did it not? I mean, it added this aura to him that, and again, it is what it is. I'm not the guy wrestling him, but he's just, it says so much about his skill level and his talent that he had a great career and it still feels like he way under, failed to fulfill his potential.
Because he's still good to this day. Like his stuff, like current day, is still very, very solid.
It's just all of the surrounding stuff with him, isn't it? Unfortunately. Bob, have you ever quote tweet dunked low key?
I guarantee you have, O'Neill.
Yeah, probably. In the past year and a half, probably.
Yeah, it's probably give you a few good reasons over the last year and a half. This match is what's incredible is it never really feels the need to settle. It's just like all out the whole time. Which again, like, it may not seem crazy now because we see matches like this regularly. In 2002, it was crazy. It was crazy. Like and the work's just great. Again, Keys, I think, like 4 years into his career. Look how good he is. Good Lord.
Yeah, and this is in front of like a few hundred people too.
Yeah.
And it's like became like a legendary thing. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I saw this for the first time on like Kazaa. Like,
oh
yeah,
good shout. Just getting videos illegally off of Kazaa. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, I just said that myself.
There was all those like, man, like all those naps. Well, like that was the whole thing for people who might be too young. Napster was like how, you know, the big file sharing thing, and like that was like revolutionary. And when they got taken down by like Dr. Dre and Metallica and stuff, then Kazaa and LimeWire and like these like third party like offshoot companies were like big for a minute. BearShare was another one, yeah. So that really, I watched a lot of that. Actually, I talked to Matthew about this from Botchamania not that long ago, and he was telling me, because I remember seeing Botchamania style videos on LimeWire and Kazaa like back in the day. And he said that he saw those too. And then he just like took over, like the guy stopped making them and he just started doing it himself and started calling them Botchamania. And now he's, this many years deep, but it was from just seeing these botch compilations on Kazaa and stuff. So it's wild.
God, look at Danielson.
He's incredible, dude.
What I think's so impressive about this match is it's a triple threat that's basically, it sounds dumb to call it a sprint because it's not a short match, but like it's all action, right? But they never ever lose the identity of Danielson as a mat wrestler. They never lose the identity of Key as a striker. And I think I wasn't there to put the match together, no doubt, obviously, but it really feels like Chris Daniels was a great glue guy for these two because he kind of, I mean, quite literally takes the bullets in that regard, right? And you really get a great sense of who those two are. And Daniels is really like the original indie star. He's a really interesting career to look back on. They just said on commentary he's like a 10-year, but I think it's around there, which is wild because he's literally still wrestling.
I remember like, I was very big on WCW, and I remember watching the night where Christopher Daniels landed on his head doing that moonsault. And I had never seen or heard from him ever again until this match, I'm pretty sure. And I remember being like, oh, this guy's incredible. Like, but all I knew him as was this dude who landed on his head. You know what I mean? Like, but if the internet didn't exist, I probably would have always thought that was just this guy who landed on his head. I probably would have never seen anything else ever again from this guy. But
he's a really interesting one in terms of, and again, incredible career, no fault of his own, but if he came through like an era or two later, he would have almost certainly been given like a world title push by one of these promotions. But the way, and he eventually became Ring of Honor champ as like a very much deserving thank you reign in like 2017 around there.
Yeah, he beat Cody for it. No, Dalton Castle beat Cody for it. Cody
he beat him for it. He beat Cole, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you're right.
Because Aaron did the double turn. Remember that deal? Because Aaron went in Bullet Club and then came back out. That was that deal.
That's right. Jeremy, this question is for you. Was Christopher Daniels supposed to be the higher power?
Oh, that was a story, right? Daniels has commented on that.
Yeah.
Such a weird fault, man. We talked about this on the grid. Like, how would the crowd have reacted to it? I've never understood
because they wouldn't have known who he was.
Yeah, they would have had no idea.
The story, right, was that like the tale or whatever that's told is that it was gonna be him, and then Vince saw him and just nixed it. He was like, "This guy's like 5'10". There's no way we're doing this."
Yeah,
like this guy's gonna control the Undertaker.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they still say stuff like that by all accounts. Elmeg says about this spot looking familiar, and I'm assuming because we saw this in the Unbreakable deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Because Joe and AJ beat the hell out of Daniels in that one too.
Yeah. So here's what Daniels said about it in 2020. I was never close to signing with WWE at the time. Probably the closest is when they gave me an opportunity to go through camp with Tom Pritchard, and Dory Funk Jr. I was there with Kurt Angle, Sean Stasiak, other people. As far as the rumor about me being higher power, I've heard that, but I never heard that at the time. I actually just heard that recently. I don't think it would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with him. It wouldn't have been. It probably wouldn't have worked. And that's not a knock on him. It's such a weird fit to do a big angle and then reveal a guy that's not familiar to that audience.
Especially it wouldn't make like too much sense nowadays, but nowadays they're weird. But like, especially at that time when they were all about like kind of popping big for these big reveals, and that wouldn't have gotten any type of big pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting career, Christopher Daniels.
There, I mean, he stuck. Bless his heart, man. He stuck it out there over at TNA. He would go back and he would try. Everything they give him, he made the most of. And I'm not going to say mistreated him. He was featured regularly, but like, I don't know. Felt like there was times where they definitely mistreated him. He's incredible. I mean, him as the veteran of this match, he's just wonderful. He's timing everything. He's so good.
Well, like the fans too. I don't have the volume, but I can see like that. I mean, they're like eating this up too.
Oh
like,
yeah.
What the hell are we watching right now? This is incredible.
And I think this match holds up really well. Mm-hmm. Which I'll be honest, guys, not everyone we do in this series will. I think there'll be some that don't hold up as well. I think this one does. But it's hard to grasp just how kind of innovative and groundbreaking this was in 2002, because the whole point of the fact it's influential is we've seen people redo this shit over and over again. That's the issue with being kind of a trendsetter like that. As people know.
Whoever in the chat, sorry, I don't have the chat pulled up, but they mentioned, this spot looks familiar with the Unbreakable stuff. Yeah, I'm sure if you watch this match now and then watch other kind of top triple threat matches throughout history, like there's probably some stuff from this match that they have taken, especially if a guy, or if Danielson, Key, and Daniels were involved in it.
Right. You saw there with Bryan, and it happens a couple of times in this match when he locks up with Low-Key, like you see that kind of edge and intensity that he became kind of famous for, and still is, as of late, especially famous for. But you see it, there's little snapshots of it when Key is beating him up and he fires back. It's, it's really good stuff.
Yeah, and to take people back to this time too, keep in mind while you watch this, like WCW and ECW had just gone out of business.
Yep.
So it's like it's only the WWE. You're like they're in this transition right around this time, I guess, 2002. So this is like post-invasion or ish time where like now the fans are like that's the one place to watch wrestling now. It's all about this one company.
Yep.
So for people to see this going on the side was like, whoa, like what the, like, it was like mind blowing. And then also TNA like was doing the same thing, almost parallel with a lot of the same talent. So that's why, there was so much buzz for these kind of companies initially, because it was so much different than like the only thing everyone was watching.
Yeah. I do often wonder, and I understand why they didn't, because they just couldn't have seen where the industry was trending. I get it. I completely get it. But it
Joseph,
really
what has happened to your audio?
I don't know.
I still hear him okay.
How do I sound?
Now it's fine. Was it on my end?
I don't know.
I think so. It sounds all right to me.
Apologies then. Sorry. Everyone went robotic for a second.
I understand they could have never, like, it's hard to see where the industry's trending, especially when it's got like Jeff Jarrett and, his father, the tradition. I get it. But it feels like their usage of talent, if it's overlapped more with how Ring of Honor used their guys, I do wonder how different their identity could have been TNA, because eventually what happened was, unfortunately, a lot of these guys got pigeonholed as the same way WCW's Cruiserweights did.
Yeah.
And it's a cool deal. It's great to see those matches for the X Division title, but like, I don't know, man. Maybe Chris Daniels should have been the world champ somewhere along there. Maybe Key should have been higher on the way. It's difficult.
Dude, this move fucking rules.
Oh, wow.
He's incredible in this match. He's just incredible. I mean, they're all great, but Low-Key is like, he's just offensively, he stands out. He's incredible.
His movements are
unique,
just tremendous. I mean, obviously his strikes and his overall offense, but just the way he moves and his footwork is so good.
It almost looks like a different species. I was like hunched over.
Yes.
And like,
there's definitely something to that. Yeah. If you silhouetted Low-Key's movements, you could probably be able to spot him. He's very different to everyone else. Everything has a snap.
and this is also once again like early 2000s when like like the Matrix and stuff is huge, and he's out there doing like Matrix type like fight scenes with like his kicks and the way they would dodge stuff and jump over kicks, and it was almost like watching this a live simulated fight scene a lot of the time.
I just think it's incredible the way the sequences in this deal, the way how neatly it's all patched together. It never feels kind of phony, right? Like it's all so sharply done without feeling over the top.
We've tremendous. I mean, I think O'Neal can speak to this better than anybody. Is like the WWE multi-man style is okay. One guy roll out and let's just do a singles match, and then we go from there. Like AEW doesn't do really like triple threat matches and things like that.
Very, very rare.
Yeah. But and I'd have to Hangman, Orange and Pac took place this year, but that had that feel of like, all right, everybody is actually in this match, and it's not let's just do a series of singles matches.
Yeah.
As a triple threat match.
And it feels like that's why like so few of the WWE ones have really stood out the past however many years.
Familiar playbook, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have when they do them, they need a real sense of emotional investment. Like, and that's why the obvious WrestleMania 21, which is remembered differently. And the Bryan one, which, that's the same. Like, I don't know how, I'll be honest, I haven't rewatched it in a long, long time, but I don't know how, like, great that Bryan triple threat was. And I don't really think it matters. Like, the point was everyone wanted Bryan to win, and that's kind of the idea. This is a different vibe where it's like, the investment is basically built on, man, this match is going to be awesome. Oh, shit, it's awesome. And that's something that's, that's kind of, Ring of Honor told great stories. So I don't want to dismiss them as just being that. Like, we're going to get to some matches where the people are living and dying on near falls. But here, their intention is definitely, like, we're going to have the best possible match.
Right. It's the first show, first main event. Right. You ain't really telling much of a story.
Exactly, of course, yeah.
There's no real setup to it. It's literally like, all right, here's 3 really good wrestlers. You may have heard of them. They're going to go out there and they're really going to establish what Ring of Honor will be all about. Like, this is the best wrestling out there.
Absolutely.
And that's what Jensen mentioned it is like the timing of, WWE was top of everything. Impact was, they were starting out there doing their weekly shows, but it did have that feeling of like WWE light a lot of times. And like, this is why I checked out Ring of Honor. Is I was like, oh, this sounds like it's something different. It sounds like it's, just like kind of banger matches. And that's what I was into.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Impact's still a couple months away too, right? This is February 02?
They would have come to June 02. So I didn't jump into Ring of Honor immediately.
Of course, no, your point still stood. It was definitely as Impact went its own trail, with Ring of Honor's identity kind of looked more solid by comparison. But it's just interesting. You don't even think of it like they was there before. I could be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure it's June 2002. So.
Yeah. Well, and also what they're doing here on top of like establishing what the company is and the in-ring style and all this, like they're immediately putting prestige on the world title. Like, because the expectation is set of like, to be a world champion in this company, like you got to be able to go like these guys. And, that's a big, not a lot of people that I had seen up to this point, I thought could go like this.
It was more unique then than it probably is now, to be honest, right? Like,
well,
there's a lot of great in-ring guys now,
Yeah, and this is what we talk about with like the influence of ROH is like they kind of, I'm going to say they just took the book on, hey, let's just kind of go kind of Japanese style and bring it and kind of Americanize it with hard hitting strikes and more athleticism and everything. But that they were doing that before anybody else was kind of doing it, and now it's almost like the norm. Again, you see this in every single AEW match, or at least on every single show.
Absolutely. This is inferior spawning stuff, folks. Just lock in and watch this next few seconds here, because good lord.
I was trying to think too when y'all were mentioning like triple threat matches.
God, that's
so sick.
Can you believe he did that shit? That's incredible.
The last great, I'm a bit out of the loop, but the last great like triple threat match I can remember from the WWE was it Lesnar, Cena, and Rollins at Royal Rumble?
Yeah,
that was really, really good. I thought. But that's like that was years ago. Like
it was nearly 7 years ago.
Yeah,
wild. There you go.
the deal with that one too is obviously Brock's a unique element, right? You can do some different stuff with him.
Mm.
Now, the low-key title reign is, it's interesting. Bob, we can end the video. There's some post-match. Just for those unaware, Daniels after the match famously is the first person that breaks the code of honor. He refuses the handshake, and that's like a big moment they reference a lot. Bob, you took that in. Oh, Jeremy, have you got the checking? You put comments on the screen?
Yeah.
Tried to find, Jack had a really nice comment about our friend Robert O'Neill. Scroll up a little bit and find that if you can for me. But first, Bob, what did you think, pal?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. You also
one above that, Jeremy. There you go.
You also kind of nailed it. Like, there was action for all three for basically the entire match. It was kind of like that Unbreakable 2005 match I watched a couple weeks ago. Very similar. And I think it's cool. Like, that banner that they have hanging, it says, "We don't imitate, we innovate." And that ended up being the case for a good chunk of, the decade.
Now, it's worth saying, and if you know, you only just need to look at the first show. But there is a lot of bad back then too. A lot of bad. A lot of stuff that shouldn't have flown then and definitely wouldn't fly now. But there is these moments, as you perfectly put there, Bob, where you kind of see a look into where the industry was headed, and those people were aware of that. But I think the majority wasn't. Jensen, looking back, you said you hadn't seen it in a long time. That was a blast, huh?
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, totally holds up to even today's standards. Like, you can show that match to a new wrestling fan that's into like the current indies, and that holds up. So, and the crazy thing is all three of these guys are still going at a high level. Like, you could put all these three in a triple threat match right now on any company, and it would, would it be as good as this? I don't know. But like, the story would be pretty incredible to see those three in a ring again together.
There you go.
Dude, TK's going to book that.
Universal Studios this weekend, TK. You got about 3 days. Go on it. Jeremy, some fun looking back on that one?
Yeah, it was probably better than I remembered because I don't have much of a memory of it. But like, rewatching low key, man, like you said it, Joseph. Like, if you watch this match, like, you would think this guy is going to be the guy of these three, and like, to most fans, he had the worst career of these three because Daniels went on to do big things, and I mean, Danielson reached the top of what many consider to be the mountain, and like low-key he was the guy who got made fun of when he was in NXT for his voice and had to get a makeover from Laycool and everything. So
that was so backwards on like everything about Low-Key. Is like, that's what they did with him.
He's a guy that took himself seriously, and I'm not blaming him for that, but like, they really enjoy poking fun at guys that take themselves seriously. It's not a coincidence that Bryan did well, who like does not care. Like, you're not going to embarrass him like he does. He did some wacky shoving, so he don't give a shit. It's different personalities. But I'd assume that Loki would tell you the peak of his career was Japan, and he was the junior champ a few times, right? And I know like that was in New Japan, but I'm pretty sure he got over pretty big in Noah too, I want to say. So he had a good career, but you're right. My God.
I can't remember which Japanese promotion it is, but it's Loki and AJ. Like, just one of my. Do you guys know what?
We talked about this before,
yeah, we did. But just an all-time match for me.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, those pairings became worldwide famous, right? You could just throw those guys on a card, and they would showcase a whole style. Yeah, I don't know.
It was 0-1. That's what it was.
0-1. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing about AJ too, is like, he had some bangers in Ring of Honor that a lot of people probably don't know about from like around this time too.
And with that in mind, gents, a perfect segue from the great professional Stephen Jensen. That's why he got the blue tick, folks. Next week, we'll be back to watch, also on YouTube, once again, Night of the Grudges, 2003, AJ Styles versus Paul London. Bob, two guys you're familiar with there, right? And you reached out to me a few weeks about, maybe it was probably less than that, it's probably about a day ago, and you said about watching some old AJ Styles. You're looking forward to that one, pal?
Yeah, absolutely. Paul London's a guy who is very good, and obviously, AJ's one of the 4 or 5 best professional wrestlers of the century so far, in my opinion. So,
I think that's a safe opinion. I mean, you phrased it in a way that made it sound really grand, but I actually completely agree with you. Well, there you go, folks. This was the first, whatever we call this now, Honor Hour, Ring of Honor Wrestling Rewind. Bob O'Neill watches Ring of Honor. Bob O'Neill goes pure. Bob is real.
I don't think people aren't going to be searching for Bob O'Neill goes pure. So ROH Wrestling Rewind. I was trying to
Purity plus Bob O'Neill.
entice some searches and clicks there.
There you go. We'll see you next week when we've got a partnership with Ring of Honor and they let us watch the matches on the screen and Ian Riccaboni comes on and we talk about it with him. That'll be next week. No, I'm messing, but thanks for joining us, those of you that did. I understand this is going to be niche, but we have a channel now, so let's fill it with weird shit like this that pops us. That's what we're going to be doing moving forward on Tuesdays. All that good stuff. Jeremy, any closing statements? Jensen, Bob, you guys can put yourself out and plug yourselves. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll let Jensen and O'Neill do some plugs. Go ahead, Jensen.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. Tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, myself and Doug will be doing live rounds. We do that every Tuesday on the RVD Tito for Life channel. Mainly talk AEW, but we also talk a lot of mixed martial arts, pro boxing, kind of whatever's going on in the world of combat sports. Tomorrow, I'll be doing a prediction podcast with Jesse. I don't know. I haven't watched the WWE since our last pay-per-view, but I'll tell you who I think is going to win at Crown Jewel tomorrow if you want to listen to me talk about it. So I'll do that tomorrow. That's going to be at 11 a.m. before my weekly trip to Dave & Buster's, where I go have my way with them every Wednesday. And then, Fightful Select Weekender podcast. Check that out, FightfulSelect.com. I will no longer be reviewing Ring of Honor on that podcast because we're going to be doing it right here instead. So if you guys enjoyed this, I hope you did. And stick with me on the Weekender because we still talk GCW, Impact Wrestling, Independent Wrestling.tv, National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, anything really you can think of outside of this and some WWE stuff we talk about. So check that out at FightfulSelect.com. And thanks for having me on, guys. This was fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more of this.
O'Neill?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at Robert O'Neill 31. Tomorrow night we will be watching some more matches in place of Dynamite at latenightgrin.com. Thursday, I am maybe doing a corner 3, depending on what time that show is on the distraction. Friday night.
You're going to be reviewing Crown Jewel, Bob.
Yeah, that's going to be the corner 3 because we ain't talking about that show.
That's fair. Friday night, after Rampage will be on latenightgrin.com per usual. And it's good stuff.
Bob promotes me better than I do, guys. That's tremendous.
Well,
there you go. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Kurt Angle chicken snacks because I saw Bob O'Neill. That's the funny. I told you all. That's the funniest thing I've seen all year was that chicken snacks review and that closing line that they're good as gold. No, you guys. Like legitimately, y'all pop me big time. Like I think y'all are hilarious. So I'm happy to be a part of this going forward. So.
It's gonna be fun, man. I'm happy. I mean, when Bryan shows up and everyone starts watching Ring of Honor, it's gonna be such a tremendous moment, right? All of a sudden, we'll be the cool kids, guys. I'm telling you, it's gonna happen one day.
Tomorrow on the YouTube channel that you're on right now, youtube.com/FightfulDistraction. Myself and SP3 going to talk NBA at 5 o'clock. Joseph, your thoughts?
I will join for that.
Really?
Probably.
All right.
I think so. Yeah. I'll be there for some of it at least.
Okay, 5 Eastern. Almatic wants to know hoops picks. I feel like Bucks and Warriors. Anybody?
Yeah, I think the Lakers are going to get off to a very funny start. I mean, that first quarter is going to be a lot of memes. I'll take Warriors. Yeah, I'll take Bucks too. I'm very bullish on the Bucks right now. I don't know why, but I am.
Didn't you pick them to win the title?
I did. Yeah, I'm cocksure, pal. I'm ready to go.
Okay. I'm very out of the loop on the NBA, but my Vikings did beat your Panthers this past week, Jeremy. So
I wouldn't put too much stock into that victory.
But that's all I've got as far as in the real world, outside of mixed martial arts, in the real world of sports right now. It's my Minnesota Vikings is all I really pay attention to. Who's supposed to win the NBA Finals? Like, who's the favorite?
I think Lakers the bookie favorite.
The Lakers are kind of the favorite. Okay. Yeah, Lakers and Nets, I think, are kind of the two favorites.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Tune in tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Myself and SP3 definitely will be there. Joseph sounds like he might be there. And then I'm sure might coach some other people.
Jeremy, we need to plug this Saturday.
What are we doing on Saturday?
Bound for Glory and Dynamite.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what is Saturday, dude? I got so many shows to get through. Yeah, Saturday, myself and Jensen are going to be reviewing. We're not reviewing Dynamite anymore, Jensen. Just Bound for Glory. Yeah. Okay. I think they're going to split those because Sean didn't want us up until like 5 a.m. reviewing both shows. So we're just going to go till 3 a.m. reviewing one show.
Okay. So we're going to be doing Bound for Glory this weekend, me and Jeremy. And then we may be doing GCW review, and if we don't, I'll either do a standalone one if they want me to, or I'll review it on the Weekender. But there will be GCW reviews for Bloodsport, as well as the Minoru Suzuki and Nick Gage and SGC Briscoe's show somewhere on the Fightful platform. So
I think because Bloodsport is the weekend as well, I'm willing to bet you do a Sunday show and do a GCW Sunday review show.
Yeah,
I'll double check.
We just got to figure it out. We'll figure it out behind the scenes, y'all. But I got
we do everything on air. We don't do shit behind the scenes. Guys, thank you guys for joining us. Again, we'll be back tomorrow, and then we got content all week on this channel, on the Twitch, on youtube.com/Fightful. Thank you guys. We'll talk to y'all later on.